My name is Eric Schultz. I'm the DCM here in the embassy, so welcome to our new embassy. For those of you who haven't been here before, we're very proud of it. We spent a lot of money on it. So we'd prefer it were a little bit closer to downtown, but you can't have everything. I'm actually here to introduce the person who's going to speak to you this afternoon, Tom Melia, who's at my right here. Tom is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. He's been in that position since 2010. Tom covers a fair chunk of the world, including Afghanistan, where he just spent a week. So he's actually come to Ukraine 4 times while he's been working in DRL, which is, I think, the most he's visited any place that he has sort of responsibility for. I think that's either a sign of the fact that he really likes Ukraine or that there are a lot of democracy and human rights problems in Ukraine. I'm not quite sure. So he'll explain that when he's talking to you, I suspect. Anyway, Tom's background, by the way, is he's not a professional diplomat. He comes from academia. He worked for NDI for a long time, the National Democratic Institute. He worked for Freedom House. Was the deputy executive director for Freedom House before he joined the State Department. So I'll turn it over to Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Melia.
Thanks, Eric, and thank you all for coming out today. I know that it's probably the chance to see the new embassy building that brought you out here, and I'm just the excuse to get in the building. But I hope this is. If it's not your first time here, I certainly hope it's not your last time here. In this day and age of enhanced security concerns, it's difficult for American diplomats sometimes to get out and about or to get people inside, and so please make the effort. I know my colleagues here want to hear from you often and see you as often as you're willing to come by here. As Eric said, I've become somewhat of a regular visitor to Ukraine, as this is my 4th visit here in less than 2 years. Today I'd like to give you a little bit of a sense of what we in the U.S. government are thinking about where Ukraine is at this point in 2012. 2012 is shaping up to be a year for some big decisions in Ukraine. And so in this critical decision year, I think it's important to underscore why I come here from time to time and what we think about where Ukraine is today. Let me start by underscoring a first principle for us in the United States. It is first and foremost for the men and women of Ukraine to make the decisions that will shape the country's future as a sovereign, independent nation. And for the people to do so, they must be able to freely exercise their civil and political rights in an environment where the rule of law is respected and government officials and institutions are held accountable to the people, including through an unfettered press, some of whom are here today. And I dare say that to truly consolidate Ukraine's independence, the country must consolidate its emerging democratic character. For what does sovereignty mean in the 21st century if a country's government does not understand that its origins and purposes are to be of the people, by the people, and for the people? As the people of Ukraine make their way forward toward greater democracy and prosperity, a path that has not been and never will be straight or smooth, as is the case with most countries in transition, we want to underscore that the Ukrainian people can count on the friendship and support of the people and the government of the United States of America. As Ambassador Teft recently stated in an interview with Ukrainska Pravda, the United States has become the largest bilateral contributor of assistance to Ukraine. Over the past 20 years, our aid to the country has been almost $5 billion. And of that assistance, our contribution to democracy and cultural exchange programs and things that are about how we all think about our political surroundings has amounted to well more than $800 million in 20 years. That's large compared to most countries in the world. It's important to recall at this point also how much the Ukrainian people have achieved in these first 20+ years of independence. I think the people of Ukraine have proved potential skeptics wrong on 2 big occasions. First, by coming together at the time of independence, East and West, North and South, to achieve peacefully national independence in 1991, and then 13 years later, by pushing back against those who attempted to manipulate a presidential election. At those critical moments, the people of Ukraine chose a path towards democracy and towards Europe in an attempt to harmonize Ukraine's political processes with Euro-Atlantic standards. Unfortunately, the governments that followed, all of them, I would say, since independence and especially even since 2004, have had opportunities to chart a distinctly democratic course and yet have failed to consolidate the country's democratic potential. The democratic potential that's present in this room and that I see when I travel around the country and visit several cities as I have done. Now, it's worth noting at this moment, as we approach the 2012 parliamentary elections, that the presidential election of 2010, and I think pretty much all observers agree, was the best election in the country's brief history, procedurally speaking. And it stands in stark contrast to the local elections that followed in October of 2010, which were filled with all kinds of irregularities. So, as we approach the parliamentary elections, the question is, will the election be conducted like the presidential election of 2 years ago, or like the local elections of 18 months ago? Now, throughout these 2 decades, we in the United States have been at Ukraine's side, steadily building a friendship and a strategic partnership. We've accomplished a great deal together, helping the Ukrainian people seek what they themselves repeatedly have said that they want, what you want: a more stable, secure, and prosperous country. But clearly more needs to be done, and it is up to the Ukrainians to take good decisions about their future. Next year, Ukraine will assume the chairmanship of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, which is built around multilateral cooperation in 3 dimensions, including the human dimension, which is about democracy and human rights. It's the only organization of its kind in the world. There are other regional organizations, but none places the importance that the OSCE does on this human dimension. No other multilateral organization provides for access by civil society organizations and journalists, media freedom specialists and others to be part of the deliberations, literally around the table at the OSCE meetings. And so Ukraine's leadership of the OSCE next year means that it will be under heightened scrutiny by its neighbors in the OSCE and other like-minded governments around the world, who are encouraging Ukraine to serve as an exemplar of how nations can uphold human rights, democratic principles of government, and the related OSCE commitments that have been agreed to over the years. Among these commitments are those reaffirmed at the OSCE summit in December of 2010. At that summit, I was there, I saw it, all the OSCE states reaffirmed, I'm quoting here, categorically and irrevocably, that the commitments undertaken in the field of the human dimension are matters of direct and legitimate concern to all participating states and do not belong exclusively to the internal affairs of the state concerned. Because we have a shared responsibility to care about our neighbors. The United States, no less than Ukraine, has, by agreeing to this proposition, welcomed international scrutiny of our adherence to the OSCE commitments on democracy. Furthermore, Ukraine and other OSCE member states have said, I'm quoting again from the declaration, "We value the important role played by civil society and free media in helping us, the governments, to ensure full respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms, democracy, including free and fair elections, and the rule of law." Now, there are a number of opportunities in the year ahead for Ukraine to strengthen its democracy, most notably by completing the implementation of the new parliamentary election law that was agreed at the end of last year, and then ensuring the participation of all political parties and their leaders in the October 28 parliamentary elections, and by welcoming and paving the way for a substantial international observer presence from the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, ODIHR. Now, Ukraine, to its credit, has already issued an invitation to the OSCE and given assurances that it will follow through on these commitments. I believe this week an initial team is arriving from Warsaw, from the ODIHR, to begin that process. As 5 European foreign ministers said in a joint essay that they published in the New York Times in March, on that day in October, the eyes of the international community will be on Ukraine, with the hope and expectation that the country will not renege on its tradition of free and fair elections. Also on the horizon, but on hold for now because of the selective prosecutions of officials from the previous government, is the signing of an association agreement and the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union. Now, when those accords are fully agreed and implemented, they will generate multiple benefits for the Ukrainian people and move Ukraine closer to integration with Euro-Atlantic structures and the Euro-Atlantic community. They will also help strengthen Ukraine's partnership with the United States because a free trade agreement with the EU and the legal norms and corporate governance standards that are reflected in that will make Ukraine a more attractive business partner for North American businesses too. Democracy and economic development go hand in hand. It's no accident that the most prosperous countries in the world, where the prosperity is most widely shared, are the democratic nations in the world. And our best and most effective partners in the world are countries that adhere to the rule of law, that have open political systems, free media, and open markets that allow all people to prosper.